Well, with the late winter temps in Michigan being so warm, I decided to do something I'd been wanting to do for a while, and that's to try some late winter coho fishing on Lake Michigan. So my son and I headed out for a badly needed cabin fever trip to give it a try. And on top of it being the earliest trip in the season we'd ever taken for these fish, we also tried a port that we had never been to. In this video, I'll show you a little bit about this port town, how we did, and I'll show you the setup and the baits that we used to catch the fish. New Buffalo is the southernmost port town on the west side of the lower peninsula of Michigan. This small port town has a population of only 1,687 people, but it was honestly one of the nicest little port towns I've been to on Lake Michigan. The Amtrak train runs right through town, and folks that live in the hundreds of condo units that surround the marina are within walking distance of the Amtrak train stop, where they can catch a train ride to Chicago or Detroit. For those looking for an early season salmon charter, this port would be a great option. But one of the things I really enjoy about fishing is the challenge of figuring out the patterns required to get the fish to bite and the culinary reward that comes with that success. So after a short ride from the boat launch, we headed out into the nearshore waters to give it a try. Now, as I mentioned, this was the earliest I had ever tried salmon trolling. Most of my experience for salmon is in the summertime. Hailing from southeast Michigan, most of my early season fishing experience on the big water has been centered around the Detroit River and Lake Erie for walleye. But after a bit of research, we put together a pattern that gave us some success. With just the two of us in the boat, we used a 6-rod setup with 2 downrigger rods, 2 high divers, and 2 lead core lines off of boards. While it didn't take too long for us to hit our first fish, it did take some time for us to see our first fish. Well, we were pretty excited to get the first one in the boat within the first 20 minutes of getting set up, and we thought for sure that an easy limit was in store. But usually when you think this way, you've doomed your trip, and it would be over 2 hours before we'd find our next fish. Although the lake and harbors were void of ice, the water temp was only about 38 degrees, and there wasn't much variation between the water coming out of the river and the lake surface temperature. So after a couple of hours of trying some different depths and looking for fish, we decided to move back to the area that we hit that first fish, and the strategy did not go unrewarded. So we missed that second fish there as I let the board slide down to the fish where it gave him enough leverage to knock himself loose. But unfortunately, that was it for us. Our time was kind of running short. We gave this area another pass or two, but we had to call it quits for the day and start heading home. So before we sign off in this video, here's a quick rundown of the baits that caught those fish. All right, so here's a real quick rundown of the setups we were using. That very first fish that came on the that first dipsy rod was this exact combination right here. It was a green dipsy diver with a kind of a chartreuse snubber off the back of it, and then trailing just a few feet behind that was this fish catcher in this sort of red and tinsel and white fly combination. So that's what caught the first fish. The second fish that came a couple hours later in that same area was this setup. We had a silver dipsy, same thing, kind of a chartreuse snubber, and then very similar combo. It was a green fish catcher with a green and sort of tinsel colored fly. And then finally, the one that kind of got off on that lead core board was just this old Rebel body stick bait. And that's what the last fish came on. Now, if you've ever wondered why these orange and red colors seem to do so well when trolling for salmon in shallow water, check out my other video on how salmon see color. I think you'll find the explanation there pretty valuable to your future salmon fishing endeavors. All three of these fish came between 40 and 43 foot of water, and they were the only hits we had in the 4 hours we fished. If you have any tips or tricks for catching these early season coho, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we'll see you next time.